Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm an aspiring author who doesn't know what she's doing. And today I'm going to walk you through why I believe I'm a pantser and not a plotter. The very first story that I worked on that I actually completed was my NaNoWriMo book last year in 2025. And if you're interested in seeing what that process looked like for me, definitely check out my videos. But for that story, it was 99% of pantsing, or making it up as I go. For me, that was really exciting, and I found that I really wanted to come back to the story and see what happens next. For the next book that I was going to be working on, it was going to be a survival fiction book. The book is about mental health and how mental health can change your perspective on situations. I think it's going to be really rewarding to write this story, and hopefully I'm able to do it justice that it deserves. That being said, I did want to do it right, so I decided to plot out my story. And in the description, I'll link the video that I used to help guide me when I started plotting the story. To plot that story, I started with an index card method, and I ended up with quite a few. I believe there's over 30 scenes in here, and I will tell you, plotting out the story was really fun. It was a really exciting time when I wasn't sure what's going to happen yet, and how are they going to get to this point and that point. And as I was figuring out what was going to happen, I started funneling it into which act it belongs into. And then from there, I made these cards, and they're broken down by different acts, and you can see these little tabs show you which act or which section of the index cards this is on. I also have a like a prep area where I put my templates, I have a legend, things like that. And I put over 8 hours into making these index cards, plotting out the book, and figuring out most of the scenes. When I sat down to write this story, the first few scenes felt really exciting, and I was really happy to be writing it because it is a story I'm really passionate about. But then I got to my next scene card that I had mapped out, and I realized it makes no sense, and that none of the character motivations make sense, and the way that I wrote the first few scenes didn't add up to where they were going. And then I was just left with more questions like, why is this happening now? Why did I make this decision? And granted, that might be on me. I might just not be a very good plotter, and that's fine. But I found myself getting really frustrated because I couldn't fit the scenes that I planned into the scenes that I wrote, and I was going back and forth. Should I scrap the project? Should I restart? Should I throw these index cards away? Should I try to follow these index cards again? You know, a lot of questions. Ultimately, I decided to just put a pause on that project. I think the material that book will cover deserves a well-rounded and mature writer, and I feel like I'm still learning the ropes, and I'm still learning how to write and what my process looks like. And I'm sure that when I get to it in the future, when I feel like I am more developed as a writer, I'm going to be really excited. Instead, I'm kind of experimenting with a different way to organize my thoughts and ideas as I'm writing. It's not quite plotting, but it does use index cards, so it's somewhat similar, and not at all really. So the new story that I'm working on, it is going to be a trilogy. It is a fantasy story, and I'm really excited to be working on it. And for that story, I'm using index cards to organize myself. You can see that the first card is exactly the same. It's just my timestamps of when I'm doing what. This is the same setup as on my writer's bullet journal. If you've seen that video, this is exactly the same thing, just in a index card. Then for my next section, I write the chapter, and then I write any questions or thoughts I have as I'm writing that chapter. So in chapter 1, I say main character's name is blank. A best friend's name is blank. How does this work again? Things like that. So that way when I go back to edit it or do my second draft, I have in my mind what I was thinking at the time or what I might have not understood at the time. And that's it. I'm keeping it pretty slim. This one index card has 13 chapters worth of questions on it. So I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful of how much paper I'm using. So the reason that I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful is because I did use a bullet journal before when I was working through my first draft. And I know that I shared a walkthrough of what this setup looks like in one of my videos. So the problem is that I had a spread per chapter. So for instance, these 2 pages are for one chapter. And then later as I worked through the book, I ended up just doing 1 page per chapter. But still, in a book that has 30 plus chapters, that's 30 plus pages that I've used that essentially I didn't need to. Like I just said, I only used one index card for 13 chapters. So I'm just trying to be a little bit more mindful of how I'm using my resources. Not that this is a bad idea, not that this isn't something that'll work for you. If that's how you prefer to visually see your information, do it. For me, it's a little bit more accessible just seeing it on one piece of paper or a few pieces of paper instead of sifting through 30 in a book like this. That being said, on my second draft, I'm going to be bringing back my bullet journal, and I'm going to use it very similarly as to how I used it for draft 1. So for that, I'll probably have a spread where I'll have one chapter, so chapter 1, and then underneath of it, I'll have all of the notes or changes that need to be made, and then maybe on the same page, if there's enough room, I'll put chapter 2, same thing, and keep going, so that way I'm using up all of the space and not leaving a bunch of blank space in my bullet journal. So as far as the question pantser or plotter, I think for me, if we're looking at it from a spectrum, I'm definitely more on the pantser side. I do still like to have maybe a few scenes in mind or a general ending or general beginning before I start into the story, but then once I have that information, I feel like I'm pretty good to go, and I just write until I figure out what's going to happen. So I think that this could ebb and flow in the future, and I definitely am going to revisit plotting techniques, maybe not as detailed as my index cards became, but definitely something different, maybe where it's a little bit less intense or less detailed. Yeah, I really appreciate you watching my video and supporting me. I feel like when I was trying to start writing or have been dabbling in writing, I spent a lot of times watching videos like this and trying to determine what type of writer I am and how I write best and following their tutorials and how they did it. I think the biggest advice that I would have told myself and that maybe would help you is just to start writing, even if you think that you might be a plotter, which I really thought I was going to be because I love checklists on checklists on checklists. You might not be. You might be a pantser, and that might be what's been holding you back from finishing your first draft. Maybe you're trying to fit a writer mold that you don't actually fit into. So that's my challenge for you, or maybe advice for you, is just go start writing and see what happens. And if you're not sure, you write yourself into a hole, just write a little note, I don't know anything about this topic, and then just keep writing. And then before you know it, you'll have your first draft done. And then future you can deal with edits and see your second draft. At least that's what I tell myself. So yeah, that's everything. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.